Hey, I'm Will Malone, and welcome to Double Negative, the rebrand of sorts of my YouTube channel and podcast. Double Negative is now kind of the banner under which all my photography work will now live. I'm making photography videos, a weekly podcast, and of course, photo series. The plural of series, whatever that is. Anyway, today I'm doing an experiment. Back in April, I went to New York City and I experimented with multi-location double exposures on film. Basically, I used my point and shoot Nikon L35AF and shot over a roll of black and white film in the woods, and then I shot over the same roll again in New York City. I marked the film when loading it to make sure it would be lined up, and the experiment ended up being pretty successful, I think. Some of these have become some of my favorite work I've shot all year. So I'm at it again, except now my Nikon L35AF is dead. So I enlisted my Nikon FE for this one. I'm doing a multi-location thing again, just this time it's also multi-temporal. So I will be traveling through space and time for this one. Okay, so I'm doing a little experiment. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm gonna shoot this roll of film 2 times, and I'm gonna shoot it once during the day and once at night. I'm shooting on Cinestill 800T. The tough part about shooting it this way is with my Nikon L35AF, I didn't have the issue of being able to shoot over it because when it rewound, it left a tab of film sticking out, so I could pull that tab and then rerun it through the camera. This is a manual rewind, so I have to make sure that I don't rewind it too much. But I'm gonna try to right now, maybe this is stupid, I'm gonna try to rewind it by ear and hear when it unlatches from the reel. So let's see. I think I got it. It's risky. Yeah, cool. Left the tab out. Since I know how double exposures work, I have an idea of how these will turn out. With double exposures, your canvas is the shadow, so the dark parts of the image will contain all your information. So it's easy to assume that these photos will largely be dominated by whatever I shoot in the day, since the night photos will be so dark. Due to that fact, I made a backup plan. So I shot some portraits of my wife because last night when I was here, I was shooting in the dark and I just didn't have a good subject. It was just the woods. It was just trees. And so I was like, man, I should shoot some portraits. So I went home last night and my wife kindly agreed to model for me. So I shot photos of her that I actually really like. I'm gonna shoot night images over those portraits of her. After shooting a roll of film in the woods at night, then a roll with portraits of my wife plus the woods during the day, I was now ready for my next location. Why Chattanooga? Well, first off, I lived there for nearly a decade. It's where my printer is, and I often work on projects there as well. I'm back and forth a lot, which is nice because Chattanooga is a beautiful place. So I figured I'd include it as a second location for this experiment, because when I got there, I'd need to shoot photos in downtown Chattanooga during the day over a roll of film that I shot in the woods at night. For the night Chattanooga stuff, I enlisted the help of my friend Woody. I told Woody, shoot some B-roll for me. And he's become Spielberg.
Yes, I am Jewish.
This would be when I shot night or twilight Chattanooga over the portraits of Anna plus the photos of the woods during the day. It's really hard to keep all this straight. Now, I've used Chattanooga before in a previous video with a similar experiment, except then I used Lomo purple film. Some of the shots look cool, but overall I wasn't in love with them. We should have probably done this in the winter so we didn't have to wait until 9 p.m. for it to get dark, but whatever. We had a good time wandering the riverfront. I snapped a few pictures before it got dark just to see what would happen, but I was excited to get some city lights in the mix of the woods. So, how'd they turn out? I think my favorite ended up being the portraits of my wife because one, I love her, she's my wife. But two, I've been spending the years so heavily focused on architecture that having some double exposure portraits was really refreshing. They didn't necessarily fit the day/night theme of this experiment, but they're still multi-location double exposures. It made me realize that I need to start mixing portraits into my work again. Overall, I was right about many of the photos where the first exposure was really dark. Many of the images looked almost like a single exposure because some of the photos were so dark that the second image took over the shadows of the first shot. And you could see a few highlights from the first exposure peek through a little bit in some of them. The ones that worked though turned out pretty interesting. Not sure what was with some of those light leaks though. In a couple of these, there were some ghostly trees just randomly in the shot. But it was in the later images where you could see both elements of the woods and the long exposure night blurs of downtown Chattanooga that balanced the day and night concept well. This one of the pizza sign is pretty interesting and kind of subtle in its double exposure. At first I totally missed it, but upon closer inspection and brightening the shadows a bit, I noticed what was going on. Too bad I misfocused on the sign like some sort of dummy. I actually missed focus on a lot of the architectural shots, actually. It's a problem with this du jour 35mm lens. It's actually kind of hard to tell with this lens when something is fully in focus or not, a problem that I don't have with actual Nikon glass. When I was walking around Chattanooga later in the day, I broke out my 100mm Nikon lens and didn't have any more focus issues because, you know, I could actually see what was in focus or not. I'm gonna keep chipping away at shooting double exposures in this style. One of the best parts is the surprise of the results. It takes film photography to the next level. Not only do I not know what my photos will look like already, but I barely know what the photo will even be. And many don't work, but some end up being better than anything I could have come up with on my own. Also, I think this experiment cemented Cinestill 800T as my favorite color film. It's pricey, but the color and the vibe really does feel like a movie. The frequency of these videos will slowly increase as I get better at the workflow. You can follow me on Instagram, of course, at Will Malone. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already.